Okay, hello everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and it is Hangout number 74. All right, let me welcome everyone who is in the chat room. Oh my goodness. Aisha's here, Callie's here, Lisa's here, Straga's here. Straga's talking about the, you're watching the Murdoch trial, and I'm not. And you're talking about how many players there are and how confusing it all is. And yeah, I'm going to let you all do that, not me. Florence is here. Tikkun is here. Christine is here. Annie is here. Lisa asked, did I say that? Oh, you heard the theme this time. Yeah, I think StreamYard fixed it because for once, that wasn't my fault. There really was a weird problem, they said, where people's videos lost their sound, but not everybody's videos, just some people's videos. So I have no idea. That's so weird. But on the other hand, when I did my video just yesterday, and I haven't done this in a long time, I clicked on a picture and I didn't unclick it. And when I'm looking at the at the screen, I can't necessarily see that the picture's still up. And somebody then told me, of course, later on, hey, you know, that photo was up over your face for like 10 minutes. And I'm like, oh, crap. And it was too late to fix it. So it goes sometimes, you know. Did I say Scarlett already? Let me go back and see. Anna's here too. And if you would like to be here, folks, in the chat rooms for all of my lives, my hangouts, and the case files, please do. Whoa, that's a terrible picture. What the heck? That one was actually good last time. See that thing on the left? That says join Patreon. And you can be at all the lives. In the middle, it just says, hey, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button. And on the right is one of my books, which you can't read the title of, which is Only the Truth. Well, there goes another technical issue. It's going to be, okay, now I'm hot because everything is already falling apart. So yeah, it's going to be one of those days, but it's a hangout, and hangouts are meant to be a little bit more relaxed. Thank you very much. I just was so pissed when I found out that I started saying the map is so important, and there's this picture of mailboxes over everything for like 10 minutes, and it was too late. People had already watched it, and I couldn't take it down and edit it, so I just let it go. But it really annoyed me. I'm really sad that it happened, and that's the way it goes. You asked how table tennis was. Scarlett, I said last time I was going to do my show on Saturday because I was going to do table tennis on Sunday. So I set up my my coach and everything. And then my son called and said, hey, Ma, are we going to watch the playoffs together? So I called up my coach and said, I'll be there next week. And I watched the playoffs instead because Kansas City won, and they're my team for reasons that are completely unknown because I've never lived in Kansas City. But when I was a teenager, I liked the team simply because I didn't like the Oakland Raiders. That's how long ago that was. So anyway, so today I've got a bunch of stuff, but first somebody said to me, well, you know, when you were in Puerto Rico, you were like drinking Puerto Rican beer at the hangout and, you know, saying, hey, you know, this is the beer of Puerto Rico. You should drink it, you know. Magna, it was the name. So just to be fair, I want to represent Maryland. This is Double Dog Double IPA, which has an incredibly high alcohol content, I must say. And let me read you from the from the back of their. I did not drink all of these. This was playoff day. I bought that for my son, and it says on the bottom, because they want to give you wisdom for your life. The beer you're about to taste may in fact change your life. I would think only if you drank this and drove afterwards, but okay. No longer will securing that same old parking space at the office give you a false sense of accomplishment. Coloring outside the lines will start to feel like the only option. Always wear clean underwear? Hell, you may not even wear underwear anymore. Challenge the status quo. Welcome to the Republic. I don't know how many IPAs they drank at the office before they came up with what they put on the bottom, but quite amusing. But anyway, cheers. It's a strong IPA. All right, so now get to it. Let's see. All right, Mike. Hi, Mike. Who's Michael? Michael. I see Martin is here, and everybody's saying hi, Michael. Where'd Michael slide in? Why don't I see Michael? I don't see Michael. What is going on that I don't know? There might be something weird happening here. And Shirley says, it's my first time. Hey, hello, Shirley. I'm glad you're here. We have chatted a little off of the show. And you have some good suggestions. So anyway, welcome everybody. And let's see. Oh, my husband's name is Michael. We're all confused now. All right, let me go to the things I want to talk about today. And there's a bunch of different ones. But I think I want to start with something I think is really important. And it just came to me over the show that I did about Nick Hillary. Nick Hillary was the man. Was that my last show? He was the boyfriend of the mother of Garret Phillips. And Garret Phillips was murdered in his apartment, his mom's apartment, strangled. And Garret Phillips, who was an immigrant from Jamaica, was charged with the crime, taken to court, and he went for a judge instead of a jury trial and was found not guilty of killing Garret Phillips. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking to myself, very interesting. So what I wanted to talk about was a thing called reasonable doubt. In other words, it's easier when you have certain crimes to not have reasonable doubt. But there's other crimes where that little thin line is there, separating people from, absolutely to maybe there's another explanation. So I'm going to talk about the Garret Phillips crime. I want to talk about Idaho, and I want to talk about Delphi. Okay, because we have 3 people charged with a crime. Now, the first guy, of course, we know is found not guilty in the Garret Phillips crime. I want to talk about him first, and then I want to talk about the other 2 crimes and say, would you find reasonable doubt in the other 2 crimes? Would you find reasonable doubt with the Garret Phillips crime? So here's what I want to point out. All right. In the Garret Phillips crime, what we have is we have video evidence. All right. If you haven't seen that, I will link it below. We have video evidence of Nick Hillary, the ex-boyfriend of the mom, in the parking lot with his car. And he admits it is his car. So it's not like the video got it wrong. Actually, the police didn't know the video that it was his car until he accidentally confessed it during he was filing a suit against the town, and he answered questions, and he answered that one that he was the guy in that particular vehicle in the parking lot. That vehicle, the boy is seen, Garret Phillips is seen on his skateboard going out of the parking lot, and Nick Hillary is seen pulling out and following him in a direction that was away from his home. Now, ignoring all the other things that make you look at Nick Hillary and go, probably the dude, probably the guy. Ignoring those things, the question is, can we place him in the apartment of Garret Phillips? Can we place him there? Okay, now we see the car following the child out of the parking lot, and only less than 50 minutes later, the child is dead. And again, Nick Hillary has some squirrely alibis, okay? But no one saw Nick Hillary at the apartment, all right? Nobody saw Nick Hillary. Nobody saw his car. Nobody saw him pull up to the building, and nobody saw him go into the building. Nobody saw him jump out of the window, which the killer did jump out of the second-story window. Nobody saw anybody, but nobody saw Nick Hillary. So you look at this and you go, okay, in spite of all the interesting circumstantial evidence, and mind you, the DNA evidence was not allowed in. That's another story. But no one saw him commit the crime. And the closest he was seen to the crime scene was the parking lot of the school as he pulled out after the child. Now, you can say, who else would have done it? Nobody else was seen. It wasn't a child. Who else would want to strangle this little boy? And mostly everybody looks and says Nick Hillary, but he wasn't seen at the scene in any way. Now, here's my challenge to you. Oh, let me ask you right now. If you were on the jury or you were a judge, and if you don't have the DNA evidence, and Nick Hillary does have an injury to his ankle, which he then said, oh, I got it moving furniture, even after he told the police he didn't have an injury. But would you have convicted him when you didn't have proof that he actually went to the apartment, actually was in the apartment, and actually jumped out the window, ignoring, I say, no DNA evidence and his foot injury, ignoring that, and his alibis are questionable, but without knowing that he was actually there, would you convict? I'm going to check your answers. I'm going to go to another scenario. Okay. I'm trying to see if anybody's answering this question, because I'm going to offer you two more scenarios of the same crime and see what you think about this, because this is where the issue of circumstantial evidence gets really tricky. Strega says, reasonable doubt would have prevented me from finding him guilty. Okay. And I'm assuming the reasonable doubt is, in spite of the fact it could have been him, without the DNA, you could not absolutely place him at the apartment or in the apartment. And do I think you're reasonable to have reasonable doubt? And my answer to that is yes. I am not sure. Shirley also says, I agree with Strega. And I, as a criminal profiler, although I'm not fond of the jury system, and I'm not fond of a one-judge system either, I think if I were the judge or on a jury, I'd have trouble with this too. I would personally, I think he committed the crime. From the evidence that I know, I believe he committed the crime. Would I be able to say beyond a reasonable doubt? It's close, but there's that little teeny thing there that says it's hard to put him there. And Molly says the same thing. I would not convict. Let's see. Kelly says, I don't know if I convict someone of murder unless totally sure. And the totally sure thing is supposed to be kind of where you should be at. In other words, the prosecution has to prove this beyond a reasonable doubt. All right, now I'm going to change the scenario for you because I want to see what you say now. All right, now, let's say this is not true. I'm making up a new scenario. Let's say that Nick Hillary's car was seen outside of that apartment at the time the boy was killed. It was seen there. There are a number of people that say they saw his car. And then he admits it was his car outside the apartment building at the time the boy was killed. But he tells you this. He says, yes, I followed Nick home because I wanted to talk to Nick's mom. I thought she would be arriving home too, because I didn't know about the soccer game, her other son's soccer game. I thought she would just be home to be with her, be home when her kid was there. So I pulled into the parking lot and I was waiting for his mom to pull in. And then I sat there for a bit and she didn't pull in. And I said, oh, I guess she's doing something else. And I left. All right. Chime in again. Where are you with reasonable doubt now? His car was seen at the apartment, but he has an explanation. Florence says, even with DNA, didn't he live in that apartment? Yeah, the DNA was a fingernail, under the fingernail DNA. So we're not talking about touch DNA in the apartment, but you're correct. That would be true. All right, Strega now says the car could be seen, but it still doesn't place him in the apartment. All right. Yep. Okay. Now you still say there's reasonable doubt because his explanation has some validity because it could have happened, couldn't it? I can imagine going there and waiting for somebody that didn't show and I left. And now the kid gets killed while I'm sitting out in the parking lot. Now I'm the person who did it, Okay, and so Benny says, highly probable he's guilty, but not proven beyond a reasonable doubt. All right, I'm going to change it now to the third scenario. Now, actually I have four scenarios. Now, Nick Hillary is seen walking up the stairs to the apartment and somebody hears him knocking on the door. They don't see him go into the apartment, but they see him at the door of the apartment. Now what? He says, and this is what Nick Hillary would say if he were being questioned about this, and we're not telling the truth, if he committed the crime, he would say, hey, yeah, I did park. I thought his mom would be home. So I walked up the stairs and knocked. I heard some noise inside. I figured he was there, but nobody answered the door. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And I left. So now you have Nick Hillary at the door of the apartment when the child is supposedly being murdered. Sandra says, why couldn't they have tested the DNA under his fingernails? They did. And you have to watch the show. There were 2 tests, and they were not allowed into the trial because of one was the test was done that New York State didn't approve of the accuracy of the results, even though the results were actually pointed to Nick Hillary. The second one was the New York Department analyzed the DNA when they shouldn't have because they weren't like certified for it. So neither test was entered into the court. Molly says, it's getting closer for me, but need more. He has BS stories for everything. Well, now you see, he's up there at the door, but again, could he have heard something going on in the apartment, not realizing the kid was being killed, and he left because he didn't know, and he thought nobody, hey, they're just not answering the door. They don't want to see me. I'm an ex, so maybe it's just not in the mood. All right. Martin says, well, he's still not inside the apartment, so same as the car, really. Yeah, but getting closer. Doubt's getting smaller, but still there. All right. Now my final scenario. Now, hold on a second. So I was turning my phone off because I just realized it was still on, and I have now my son is sick. I had him over here Sunday. That's not good. All right. So, now this is the next scenario. Nick Hillary says, yeah, I followed him home because I was going to talk to his mom about getting back together and saying, hey, I understand you still want to live separately. Hey, Garrett, I get you. I'm a strict father type. And I know you're not into that. I'm going to lay off on being so strict because I'll save it for my kids. I get where you're coming from. It's not what you're used to. I've analyzed it. I recognize it. I think it was my fault that I put you in a situation where you didn't want to live with with me anymore, and you asked your mom not to have a separate abode. So I get it. So I went there to talk to my ex because I really do love her, and I like the kid. It's just I understand where he's coming from. So I went and I knocked on the door, and I heard something inside, and I said, hello, hello. And then I opened the door and went in, and oh my God, I saw Nick lying on the floor. In my opinion, he was dead, and I was freaking out. I closed the door behind me, and then I heard another woman come and knock on the door and say, hello, hello. And now I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm in the apartment. Garrett's dead on the floor. Holy crap. So I turned the lock on the door and I jumped out the window because I was so freaked out. All right, now. Is he guilty? Would you find him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt? When his story is, I went into the apartment, it was open, I heard something, and I found the situation. And then I felt like because I was a Black man, because I was the ex-boyfriend, because I had gone there, that I would be accused of this horrible crime. So I freaked and jumped out the window. Now where do you stand now? Some bad luck. All right. That's what Nick Hillary claimed to begin with. He said, I had bad luck. I was in the parking lot and pulled out because I came to watch a soccer game, and then it rained. So I left. It just happened to be bad luck. I pulled out after Garrett went off on a skateboard. Yeah. Molly says, like Warren Berger said, circumstantial evidence is the strongest because it's so difficult to arrange. Nick blows smoke on everything. But what if it were true? And here's the thing. We're not talking about aliens. We're talking about, at this point, a man who says, I did go into the apartment and I found Garret Phillips lying there dead on the floor, and I freaked because I thought I would be accused. Now, isn't that rational? I mean, I might have thought that myself especially if I were, what he considers it might be a racist area and he's the ex-boyfriend and the kids didn't like him, I think I'd be accused. I might jump out that window. You see, this is what happens when you're in a jury situation or even judge situation, that you can look at that and say, there's some reason to believe it's possible, not probable, but possible. And now the question comes down. Okay, wait a minute. Anne says, if it's true, he would have opened the door and would call for help. Would he? Would he when he thinks he's going to be accused of being the murderer? He's the only one in the apartment with a boy that's just been strangled. Would he really think that people would just go, so glad you showed up to call for help? Or would they think he killed him? Personally, I think people would think he killed him. So Anna, much as that seems like a reasonable thing to do, it's possible he would freak. Let's see. Okay, Strega says his explanation is plausible, but not airtight. It doesn't have to be airtight. It has to be plausible when you're talking about reasonable doubt. Now, and Scarlett says, true, and he might have panicked, but who knows? Now, so here we are. The question comes down to the totality of the evidence. And so when you add in all the other things, excluding the DNA issues, the lies that he told about, he didn't have an injury on his ankle, wouldn't show his ankle. And then when it was proven his ankle had an injury, he said, oh, it was from moving furniture. When he said he didn't have a problem with Garrett, but it turned out that there's evidence written evidence that Garrett didn't like him. And that's why the family moved out. I mean, when you put everything together, the totality is pretty good, along with why he was even in that parking lot that day and at school is garbage. But you see how that reasonable doubt comes in? It's there right almost to the end, so now I'm going to take a different circumstance. Is there reasonable doubt so far in the Idaho murders? Because we have a guy there. Now, we do have a sheath left from a knife with his DNA on it. His car that he was driving was seen near that location. Do you think there's reasonable doubt so far in the Idaho case? What do you think? Let me just go back here to Benny, what he's saying here while I'm waiting for that. We need some physical evidence that contradicts his testimony. There is a law that contradicts his testimony. But people will say, the defense attorney will say, well, he's just, he's saying what he's saying because he's afraid. He thinks he's going to be accused. He thinks it's racist, blah, blah, blah. So this is a problem with testimony these days, that if you have an excuse for why you lie, it seems to be okay. Oh, I lied because I was afraid, is sometimes very convincing. So that doesn't necessarily get you out of there. Even a grainy video. They have a video of him following him out of the school with the car. So that's not questionable. The question is, did he go to the apartment and then enter the apartment? Okay. So here we have, I think you're talking about Idaho now. You say, no, he's going to fry. All right. You don't think there's reasonable doubt so far in Idaho. Well, okay. Kelly, if I was accused of murder, I'd be screaming my head off, not just sullen as Koberger. Again, that's not evidence. That's personal opinion. That's what I would do. People act very weirdly, and unless they act, here's the point about when you're trying to analyze something. What were they like before, and what were they like after? And I've used this one before. If I end up dead and my daughter says, well, the last time I saw my mom, I gave her a hug and said, love you, Mom, I love you. She lied. She killed me. Not because my daughter doesn't love me, but because we don't say those things. I take that back. I say that, but only in certain circumstances. And that would be mostly to my son, Jeremy. My son, Jeremy, is a love you guy. I love you, Ma. Ma, I love you, Ma. And I go, love you, Jeremy. My daughter and I, we're very close. We don't say that. So you have to look at this. So if my son Jeremy said, last time I saw my mom, I told her I loved her, then you can believe him. If my daughter says that, you go, I don't know. That doesn't sound like her. So we have to know how the person behaved before to know how they behave after. If a person is a sullen human being to begin with, they might be a sullen human being after a crime, and it doesn't mean they committed it. If they're very talkative before a crime and they're very talkative after, again, they're talking, doesn't mean that they're trying to cover up something. What if they don't want to speak? What if they just want to ask for a lawyer? Maybe their experience has been you should ask for a lawyer and say nothing. So you got to be very careful whether we are taking our own behaviors and saying, well, I wouldn't do that. Well, we might not, but maybe somebody else would. So that's important. Scarlett's got are you going to join Kohberger's his defense team? I think his lawyers will claim reasonable doubt because he could have touched that sheath at a knife expo. You know, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if that popped up there. Strega has pointed out something interesting. Reasonable doubt stems from the roommate's response alone. I would disagree with that because I think there's enough evidence to put Kohberger there, especially the sheath and the DNA, his car, all that stuff, that regardless of how the roommates responded, it doesn't take away that he was there. I mean, unless you're going to believe that somehow the roommates got hold of his knife, his sheath, and his DNA and staged the whole thing, which doesn't make any sense. The phone pings depend on the range, and if he can explain why he was in the area, yes, over and over and over again. This again is circumstantial evidence. Alone, it might not be enough. With the totality of the evidence, the DNA in this case is very useful. Let me tell you, that sheath thing, man, you don't want to drop your photo ID or something that you're using that is going to link right back to you with DNA. He screwed up, thank God. And there's an interesting point. He had reason to be in the area. He lived nearby. He lived relatively nearby. That's true. Not very far away at the other university. So he could have been rolling around to go to a restaurant, to whatever. But it depends how often he rolled around and how close he got to certain locations. And again, the totality of all the evidence. Molly says, for Idaho, so far, the evidence is available stronger than reasonable doubt. I agree. I think at this point, Kohberger's going down. I think they got a lot on him. I do. I think that is going to, I think even with a jury trial, that they'll find him guilty. If all goes as I see it go. Now let's go to Delphi. Delphi is interesting because we have a suspect who places himself at the time of the crime, generally speaking, close to the crime scene. He's there. The claim is not only is he there, but he has a jacket like the jacket. He has ammo like the ammo that was found between the two girls. And I say the word like because I'm not entirely sure of how well this has been proven. And of course, the defense attorney is going to nail this one. So now let's assume this goes to court with no more evidence than what is there now. Would you find reasonable doubt that Richard Allen killed the two girls? Even if you believed he killed the two girls. And personally, I think they got the right guy. Do you think there's enough there to prevent reasonable doubt? So that's my question. Well, that's a good point, Sandra. Who knows, because Delphi won't release the probable cause. Well, they did have a probable cause, just not a very thorough one with enough information. So the question is, do they have more than they're letting on at this point? And sorry, I appreciate this. Touche. I always put my trash in the neighbor's garbage can. That is a very smart move, Sandra. And if I find out where you live, I'll let the police know that you might be a suspicious human being, but a very smart one. There's a great truth in that, because your trash can is where if it's on the street, it's fair game. I've done that when I was doing private investigation. Believe me, I did love a trash can. And you just take the entire trash bag, you go home with it, and what you do is you put a tarpaulin down on the floor, plastic of some sort. You dump the entire thing. It's disgusting, but man, do you learn a lot about people from the trash that they put out there. So, yeah, put it in your neighbor's trash can. I have to be. I think that's brilliant. Strager says, if it's going to be a capital case, I need 100% certainty to convict. That's not reasonable doubt. Let you know. That's not reasonable doubt, because almost never, Strager, do you ever have 100% certainty. Reasonable doubt is not about that. It is. Let me pull up the actual statement for reasonable doubt, okay? Because, and then what's happening is with all the clever, with all the issues about, people expecting, DNA there, and all the shenanigans played by the defense teams, reasonable doubt is getting easier and easier to have. So anyway, here it is. Reasonable doubt is a doubt based upon reason. Okay, this is why circumstantial evidence is acceptable, because you have to put everything together and go, I may not have every single piece of information, or not a 100% physical information, but when I put everything together, the totality of the evidence, it's reasonable that I believe this person committed the crime. Reason and common sense, and is not based purely on speculation. Now, this is one of the things I try to teach here. You cannot base things just on, this could have happened. That's just speculation. Making up a scenario is speculation, and that is not enough to convict somebody. So you have to have enough totality of the evidence, even circumstantial, to believe that, using common sense and reason, that this person committed the crime. It is not 100%, okay? So it has to be insufficient evidence, to the point where you say, I just absolutely do not know. I can't be sure of it. So I wasn't in the court for Garret Phillips. I don't actually know. I say, from where I'm standing from the outside, I would probably say, I believe he did it, but I don't have enough evidence to absolutely say without a reasonable doubt. But if I'd been in the court, I might think totally differently, because I would be presented with the entire case, which we aren't getting here, especially when the defense team is putting out their version, and the media, the production companies are putting out their version, because a lot of them are pushed by the defense team. So we're not actually getting clarity about the evidence. So if we were in the courtroom, we might think differently. If I were on the police force and I'm looking at every shred of evidence, I might think differently. But from the outside, I'm not really sure. But reasonable doubt is not 100% ever, because there's no such thing, literally no such thing. Even DNA doesn't prove for sure, because a lot of things depend on how the DNA might have gotten there, or whether there's problems with the DNA lab and a few other things. I've had questions about DNA, which I'm not buying in certain cases. And I have a couple of those cases, which I think the DNA was fudged. And I'm going to do a show on Saturday. It's going to be, because I am going to play table tennis this Sunday. I am. It's on Dana, Ireland. It is a Hawaiian case. And the reason I'm going to do it is because this week, the last incarcerated guy has been incarcerated over 2 decades for this crime, which was a young woman who was bicycling home. She was staying on the island, and she was bicycling home to the holiday place she was staying at. And she was run over, and then the claim is she was raped and murdered. She was found alive, but she died. 3 men were arrested for this crime. One confessed and claimed the other 2 were in on it with him. Then he recanted. He ended up dead. He got murdered in prison. And then the 2 brothers who he had said were there, one did not confess, and the other one confessed because he thought, hey, my brother went to prison for 20 years. I'm just going to confess so I can get out. And he got a plea deal. And so he's fine. But the guy that was in for 20 years just this week, or just last week, the judge overturned everything, and he is now a free man, and he is exonerated. And I find it a very fascinating case. And so I have been studying that case. And I'm just going to let you know ahead of time before Saturday comes, the DNA that they found from semen fractions did not match any of the 3 men that were accused of the crime. So, very interesting crime. So I'm going to do that one on Saturday because this guy just got out and I looked into it. So 100% isn't necessarily even DNA. It isn't necessarily a confession. Even lots of circumstantial evidence doesn't necessarily add up to 100%. It can add up to 98% because there's always going to be that. But the totality of the evidence and the idea that it is extreme, there's like no other explanation that one can really come up with outside of aliens, that could have committed the crime. That's when you're allowed to say, I do not have reasonable doubt. Not I have 100% no doubt. I have no reasonable doubt. So that's what that actually means. So I think that's important to understand. Let's see. That might work on the Delphi case because he was the only male in the area at the time of the crime. Well, no, wait a minute. He was the only one who admitted to being there. There were claims and sketches of people who didn't look like him. And some people say the video didn't look like him. So there you go. Benny says, Scott Peterson is a good example of the totality of evidence proved beyond a reasonable doubt that he was guilty. He was boating in the area of the day his wife disappeared, the same area she was found. Yeah, in that case, there were so many pieces of circumstantial evidence, which were like, you just go, there's no way he didn't do this. I mean, I absolutely believe there's no reasonable doubt in my head that he's guilty. There are still some people who claim, oh yeah, those burglars down the way, hey, they did it. They not only did it, they planted her body where they followed Scott Peterson to where he was fishing and planted her body there. That's when you talk about stupid scenarios that people create. That's not permissible. Okay, so that's not how you create reasonable doubt. Well, you can create it, but it's ludicrous. So that's not acceptable in determining if there's reasonable doubt. Let's see. I do not know about Jay Cook or Tanya. I don't know. Genealogy DNA is very useful, but you have to have something a little bit more than that. So, I mean, it's fantastic, but you have to be sure that, when you come down to it, it's not just that he could have done it. You got to match his DNA. Absolutely. And then you got to make sure he was even in the area at the time and so on and so forth. Well, Molly, you're right. For Delphi, the jury needs to be top notch as well as the prosecutor because the defense attorneys appear to be very good. I hope they've got more. That's all I can say. I think they have the right guy, but I hope they have more because if they don't have more, I don't know. I don't know if he'd be found guilty. And I haven't, I don't know what all the evidence is yet. So that's why I don't comment on the case very much because I quite frankly don't know. I really don't know. So have to wait and see. All right. I know my family. I'll keep my DNA to myself. It's interesting when you think about, how not all the genealogical DNA places will let the police access. I think there's only two or three of them, and it's not the main one. What's the main one? I forgot the name of it, but that one actually doesn't let the police access it. So, but anyway, so that was just something I wanted to point out because I just thought it was really interesting when I was thinking about the issue of reasonable doubt. What does that mean? And Benny asked me something, so I want to address this. Benny asked me about cadaver dogs. He said, in the McCann case, the Madeleine McCann case, a little girl that went missing in Portugal and has never been found, and many people, including myself, because I wrote a book on it, believe that the evidence points to the McCann's involvement in what happened to their daughter. And one of the biggest pieces of evidence is the cadaver and blood dogs who hit in the apartment. But many people who believe the McCanns have no involvement will say But we don't believe that the dogs were accurate because the dogs, there wasn't enough time for Madeleine McCann's body to decompose enough for the cadaver dog to be able to hit. All right. And it is very close, okay, in that sense. Blood dog, not so much. But cadaver dog, it's a little bit more questionable. Let me explain how that works. So the problem is the understanding of cadaver dogs and what they're able to accomplish is always argued, and it's really hard to tell whether it's scientifically argued or it's defense-oriented argued. Some people, if you go on the internet, you'll say, "Oh, they can't hit on anything for at least 24 hours. The body has to be laying there for 24 hours before they're going to recognize the scent." And that will be, if you look on the internet, repeated on about 2,000 sites, because, as I point out over and over again, most people don't get their information from a real source. They just copy something else from the internet. So it proliferates to the point where that's all you can find. And it's really hard to find anything else but the 24 hours. That's not true. 24 hours is, it's exaggerated. Now, this was an interesting study that was done. Look at this study. All right, this trial was done. Now, admittedly, this isn't the most exciting trial ever. They used 5 dogs, and I don't know how good the dogs were. The dogs that were used in the McCann case had great records, like ridiculously, like almost 100% hits on that. It was a great record. But anyway, they used 5 different dogs. And this is way back in 1997. I don't know. I was trying to find what has been done since, and I know I ran across something, and then I can't find it again. So they did these trials. They did 52 trials. The preliminary results were this. They were looking at the postmortem interval range from 70 minutes to 3 days. So they were trying to say, hey, at what point do these dogs hit? Okay, the shortest postmortem interval for which we received a correct response was 1 hour and 25 minutes. Does that sound like 24 hours to you? No. All right. However, the postmortem interval for which we received a consistently correct response for all the dogs was 2.5 to 3 hours. All right. Now, all the dogs, these are 5 dogs, and I'm going to say they probably weren't the quality that were used in the McCann case. The McCann case dogs are like the top dogs in the world. I don't know whose 5 dogs these were, how good they were, but 5 of them hit 2.5 to 3 hours, all 5. Now, that's interesting to me because we're not talking 24 hours. We're talking 2.5 hours. And possibly 1.5 hours. All right. Now, looking back at the McCann case, I'm going to look at my book for a second. The last time that I absolutely know, I don't even know this is true. The last time the McCanns claimed they saw Madeleine McCann alive was around 7 to 7:30 p.m. Then they went drinking some wine, and then they left, and who knows how much of what they said was true. All right. So let's assume that Madeleine McCann came to an accident at 7 o'clock. By 8:30, a dog could pick that up. By 8:30. So could Jerry McCann have come back, found his daughter on the floor, found her dead, and tried to make a decision what he was going to do? Absolutely. So by 8:30, yes, absolutely. And we don't know that 7 o'clock is accurate. It could have actually been 6:30 or 6 o'clock. So we don't know this. So do I believe, Benny, that the dogs could well have been accurate? And my answer to that is yes, especially the blood dog. And when they hit on the car, that was later in time, and her body might have been laying there longer. Who knows? The thing is, it's very hard to tell on certain things because and this is why you have a prosecution expert say one thing and a defense expert say another. So if you go to the body farm who tests a lot of these things about decomposition and stuff, you'll learn a bunch of things, but it's not always absolute, depending on the heat, depending on the injury, depending on this, depending on that. There's so many things involved, depending on the dog's skill, so on and so forth. So alone, would I say that the dogs, beyond a reasonable doubt, proved that Madeleine McCann died in the apartment? No, not beyond a reasonable doubt, because, hey, they're dogs. It's not allowed to court for that reason. And alone, I wouldn't say so. However, with everything else that happened and all the other statements and all the other things that went on and all the lack of evidence of an intruder, do I say that I just don't believe in the intruder theory? I don't have any evidence any intruder came in. And along with that, the dogs are very compelling. So again, if I were in a court of law, where would I be at? If I were on a jury, I don't know exactly. But outside of a court of law, I would say the evidence does not point to an intruder, and the dogs certainly could have, very well, could have been accurate in their hits on cadaver and blood in the locations that were there. They were the most highly trained dogs in the world, and unless somebody else died in the apartment, which is behind the sofa, which is really unlikely, and the dogs are completely wrong, I would say compelling, but not alone. You have to have more than that. But it is interesting. It's a great question, Benny, because it's really hard as far as the knowledge that we have as to how good the dogs are and exactly when they can determine anything. And there's so many different factors that weigh into all of that by the time you get to court, believe me, the prosecution will be telling these factors and the defense will be doing those factors, and the jury will sit here going, I haven't got a clue, which they shouldn't, because I don't even know that the experts have a clue. So there you go. But it's an interesting question. Yes, Martin, I agree. The most important evidence in the McCann case is the lack of an abduction. There is a massive amount of evidence that there was no abduction, that just nothing pointed to an abduction. The window issues, the outside the window issues, the inside the house issues. I mean, it just goes on and on. And if you want to know more about that, go read my book. It's not on Amazon because the McCanns had it pulled off of Amazon, but you can find my book. Where's my book? Oh, here it is. The one on the right, that's Martin. That is Gonzalo. Hold on a second. Hold on one second here. Hold on. Gonzalo Amaro's book you definitely would like to read. It's called The Truth of the Lie. It is in English on the internet, and he's written a second book. I'm not sure where that is right now. My book is Profile of the Disappearance of Madeleine McCann, which you can get from Apple and Smashwords and Barnes & Noble, but not on Amazon, where I say the McCanns filed claims of libel against me with Carter Ruck, their top lawyers. And so, yeah, you can't see it there on Amazon, but every place else where they thought I wouldn't make any money. And they were totally right. Again, Sandra, this when you say there's babysitting available at the hotel, there is. That doesn't mean they're guilty of anything. Just because we don't like somebody's parenting style is not evidence. That's opinion. I personally think the fact they left their children alone and went drinking is not acceptable, and that they could have gotten babysitting. But, that's my opinion. They thought, hey, if we lock up the place, which I think they locked up the place, I don't think anybody just walked in. So I have all that's in my book as to why the evidence points one direction, but we got to keep away from just opinions. Because that is again something, and when you're doing analysis, is not very useful, because it's not facts. It's not fact. It's factual that they didn't use the babysitting service, but it's our opinion as to why they didn't. And just because they didn't doesn't mean they committed a crime. Nick Hillary in the Garret Phillips crime, just because the kid didn't like him doesn't mean he committed the crime. But now that can play into motive. True, but you got to be careful about, how far we go with that. Anyway, so to my next little thing I want to talk about. I have to do one soapbox, I just do. Because, and then I'm going to go on to a woman killing her children and a man killing his children or attempting to kill. And what is the difference between the two? And I'm going to talk about that in a second, but I just got to talk about this because this is local to me. And I've talked about this kind of thing before. And this just drives me bananas. And this is definitely a, hold on a second. Let me find the story about this guy. Was just shot in Washington, D.C. And let me find him. All right, here we go. His name is, where's his name? Wait a minute, hold on a second. Sorry. He was called a safe passage worker. And when I first read this, he's 36 years old. His name is Michael Gaddis. Now, this young man was 36, so he's getting terminal age, but okay. He worked in the DC Safe Passage, Safe Blocks Initiative. So there are people in DC who are paid to man these different blocks near schools, and he was near this high school. And the idea is that he's helping children get from home to high school to home safely. So kind of like a crossing guard, but more for fights and violent issues. And this guy, Michael Gaddis, was out there trying to help children go to and from school safely. All right, so all this sounds really good, and your first response is, oh my God, this guy's doing a good thing, and he gets killed doing it. All right. However, then I look a little further, and here's where my soapbox starts. Okay, Michael Gaddis, he was shot in a dispute. He was not shot because he was protecting children. He was shot in a dispute. He was having a dispute with someone who pulled a gun out and killed him. This concerns me because as a parent and a grandparent, if you're going to put somebody on the streets that's supposed to be protecting my children, they shouldn't be the kind of person who gets in disputes with people who would kill them, okay? I want somebody out there who is extremely honorable, has no enemies. I mean, you can't prevent everything, but yeah, I want the guy who goes to that church down there, plays a violin, and has zero criminal record, and is the most upstanding member of the community. That's what I want. When my children walks by this guy, that's who I want out there. So it would be like incredibly unusual that anybody would have killed him because he's like this super, moral fellow. But we have this guy. I'm not saying he didn't care about kids. He had 4 of them. I don't know where the mothers are, but he's got 4 of them. Okay. But here's the thing. So I'm looking at this guy and I'm like, all right, so you're out there, you're supposed to be providing safety. Now he's a barber in the area near my area, which is called Tacoma Park, which is Maryland. And the first thing that struck me is a number of things. And I don't know any of this is true, but a lot of people who work in barbershops who are barbers learn the art of barbering in prison. I don't know if he's ever been in prison, but it makes me wonder. He's also working for this program, which means that if you've got time to help the kids get back and forth to school, how are you doing that with your barbering job? Or are you just working part-time barbering? I mean, what's really going on there? I couldn't figure out where he barbered, but he was in Tacoma Park, supposedly, Maryland. All right. Then he is a rap guy. Okay. He's a singer, and he's got a little channel, and he was promoting himself in that industry. I've talked about rappers before. So I went and looked at his channel, and I'm going to say this, which is sad. I think he's talented. I do. I think he's talented. Here he is in Ocean City, Maryland. And he has a little thing here where he's got some girls in bathing suits, and he is singing about, and they're running around in Ocean City, Maryland, which to me is fine because Ocean City is a happy family place, theoretically, along with the drunk students. But anyway, I go there. We have a condo down there. We go, the boardwalk is cool. It's really a kind of they've really fixed the place up. It's very nice. And here he is with his buddy, and they're in Ocean City. So I'm like, oh, that's cool. That's awesome. So I'm thinking, all right, maybe his rap is not, he's not saying stuff that I think is harmful to children and would represent him as a very upstanding fellow. Then I see this one. It's called Cherry Pie. Now, I had to look this up because cherry pie is, on one hand, is sexual. I'm not going to get the description of that, but it also means a kind of marijuana. It's called cherry pie. And you say, well, maybe that's just, it's just, something else. But here he is smoking a blunt. All right. He's smoking a blunt. He smokes one in the videos. He smokes one when he's just doing these like little outtake videos where he's just hanging out with his friends on the streets of DC. He's smoking a blunt there too. He smokes a lot of weed. Okay. He does. And then in the video, they show, oh yeah, here's a girl apparently, doing the booty thing and getting paid for it. And a lot, this is my tame photo because the rest of them would get me demonetized for what I put up. And yeah. And then one of them has a crap game in it. And then he says, when he's singing, he talks about weed, but he also says my 45. So although he doesn't have a bunch of guys with him all going, hey, with all the guns, like some of the rappers, he still talks about a gun. And he talks about weed. And he's got women acting slutty. And I'm saying to myself, why is it that we keep supporting people who do things that harm children? Because what the children looking at this are young children. They're not 21 years old. They're 13, they're 12, they're 10, they're 8. They're watching these videos and they're hearing about what weed they're supposed to smoke. They're seeing it's what you do on the streets of DC. They see the women acting slutty. They see him talking about a 45. So, it's all included there. Now, his isn't as bad as other rappers. I will say that his is a little bit less horrifying, but he's talented and he could have done great stuff without the negativity, without the stuff that ruins the lives of young children. So now you got this guy out there and he's talking about stuff which I'm questioning now, what illegal activities he might be involved in. Now you got him out there supposedly protecting children while doing stuff to help children get involved in drugs and violence and early sex. This is not a guy that should be mentoring to children and protecting children. And thank God there were no children coming home from school that he was helping get home safely when he got shot, because they could have been shot with him. So what the heck? So my problem is with our community. We don't have very high standards. We don't have high standards for the music that children watch. We don't have high standards for all the videos. They're disgusting. Sam Smith just came out with one. Oh my God, it's the most perverse thing I've ever seen. And of course, we all know WAP. I mean, this is stuff children shouldn't see. And I don't care. Maybe if you're 30 years old, I don't give a crap if you watch this stuff. But I care that children have 100% access. On Twitter, do you know that Chinese hardcore porn comes straight through your Twitter feed? And it's already in motion. I'm not talking about you have to click on it. I have on my Twitter feed and I see hardcore porn from China coming through. I have reported this dozens and dozens of times and it keeps coming through. So your children are on Twitter feed watching hardcore porn. They're watching videos that are talking about every kind of sex thing there is, that include lots of drugs, lots of guns. They're doing that. They're watching video games, which are violent as hell. They're watching movies that should have been meant for adults, but for some reason, the children are in the room watching these ultraviolet movies. Where do we as a society finally step in and say, hey, wait a minute, this is criminal. Our behavior as adults and how we are taking care of children is bloody well criminal. And we got to stop blaming that one person. This guy got shot. He's dead. He's got 4 kids who have no father now. He's dead, can't produce any music. But who the heck thought he should be in this program if he's got, I don't know if he's got a criminal record, but I'm questioning it. And he does this. If they saw his videos, they just said, you can't be in this. You can't be standing on the street providing safety for our children when you're involved in the kind of stuff that is encouraging violence. Because I don't know, there's a lot of rappers getting shot down in DC, and we don't want you being shot down with children around you. So that's my soapbox. I find it interesting as a society how we are not stepping up to the plate to say this is unacceptable. It is. It's just unacceptable. And we don't do that. And so the violence against children continues. The amount of children carjacking, the amount of children with weapons, the amount of children committing horrific crimes is increasing because the adults, quite frankly, and I don't just mean their parents, I mean the entire community, the teachers, the the social workers, everybody else is going, well, that's not so bad. Yeah, it is bad. So that's my soapbox for today. Love the soapbox is bad. Well, you're very kind. Oh, that's interesting. I have two. I've reported to FBI. I got crickets. Twitter has child pornography. It's unbelievable, really. You know, I haven't seen child pornography there, but the Chinese hardcore is there. We're not even talking softcore. We're talking hardcore, in your face, body parts. And I'm like, oh, I hope my granddaughter's not on Twitter, because it's not a case of she would have to go looking for it. It's just a case it comes into your Twitter feed. So that kind of yeah, it just drives me crazy. So yeah. Well, that car body shop and painting. I mean, I don't object. I think, there's been people who've come out of prison who've learned, barbering and other trades. And I'm all for this, mind you. I'm for this. I'm just concerned about who you hanging with when you're out. If that's what you were in, if you were actually in there. It's interesting. Even I think his mother or his grandfather said, I told him he got to watch out who he's with. So they know something is up. They know he's not always hanging with the most healthy group of people, which is his business, but not around children. That's my problem. Why are you being hired into something for safe passage for children when you got people you're hanging around who aren't safe? That's what drives me nuts. All right. Now let me go back to Mary here. One theory is Madeline woke up and left the apartment, was abducted in the street. The apartment was locked, 100% locked down. She couldn't get out of the apartment. Don't buy that one. Read my book. All right. Now, let's see. All right. Now I want to talk about this. This is the new Andrea Yates case, and it's really, really horrifying. Let me go find it. The whole case just really bugs me. It actually does. Her name is Lindsay Clancy. She strangled all three of her children, including the girl, the boy, and a little baby. And then she leapt out of a window. All three of them died. The infant died. It took a little longer to die than the other kids. Wait a minute. Why is my thing not working here? Hold on a second. Oh, here we go. Read more. Sorry. All right. And she is a midwife, a nurse midwife who works in labor and delivery. And so let me read you about this. A 32-year-old mother in Massachusetts will soon be facing multiple murder charges after she allegedly, and I'm going to put allegedly out there for a really good reason. I'm going to explain to you why as a profile, I would look at this first, maybe a different way. Not that it's so, but I would tell you as a profiler what I would do. Allegedly killed two of her children and left the third, an infant, severely injured, and he died a day later. Before attempting to take her own life, she jumped out a second-story window. That's the claim. Lindsay Clancy remained in the hospital on police guard after she strangled and killed her 5-year-old daughter, Cora, her 3-year-old son, Dawson, inside their suburban home. The 7-month-old son survived the attack and remained hospitalized. All right, so this is the story. That her husband was working at home. There's the husband. And he went out to pick up a food order. And during the 25 minutes he was out, this all occurred. Kind of like Andrea Yates. She had that time frame where she could drown all of her children. And this shows you, in my opinion, because I've always believed that Andrea Yates, it was a premeditated homicide, and I believe she should have been nailed with that. Premeditated homicide. And here we have again, if this guy goes out for 25 minutes, she takes that opportunity to kill all her children in midday. If she had issues, she could have left the home. She could have told her husband not to leave. She could have done anything, but she waits for him to leave and then she kills all the children, then jumps out the window. All right. Just let me back up just a second. I want to tell you a little bit about her. So it's really a strange case in the sense that, see this picture? there she is with one of her babies doing a swimming thing with him. If you go on Facebook, all her pictures are super happy. She loves her children. You can see all these wonderful things she's doing with them. In a million years, looking at those photos, I would never think, oh my God, this is a woman who's going to kill her kids. Now, mind you, people will say what you see on Facebook is fake, that people don't put the crappy shit on Facebook. Except for one friend of mine. Before Facebook existed, she used to send out these, those Christmas letters you'd get that say everything about the family. She was always interesting. Instead of saying things like, oh, my husband and I, we went on a wonderful cruise to the Bahamas, and our children are top students. They all got 4.0 averages, blah, blah, blah. She would say things like, well, my husband lost his job and he's really depressed. And our kid has some kind of emotional trouble, so we're trying to get her into therapy. I remember reading these letters going, well, there's one honest human being. But it's true. Facebook, generally speaking, everything looks really good because people don't necessarily put up terrible things about what's happening to them. So it's presentation. Okay. So maybe she just had this presentation. She wanted to present herself as a super happy mom and a happy family. Now, there were some inklings. She said she was suffering from supposedly some postpartum depression. But what's fascinating about this is that, let me see if I can find it here. It says here, according to the report from Boston Globe, which of course is not much of a report anyway, Clancy approximately 6 months ago though. See, here we get this questionable crap, that she struggled with postpartum anxiety, but said her focus on physical and mental health had made all the difference. There were some claims that in recent times she had been going to therapy. I don't even know if this is true, like intensive therapy. I don't know. But it's interesting because she is a nurse, a midwife. She works in a situation where she knows about postpartum depression and how, she's got all the help in the world. And you just wonder, really? And you didn't get all the help in the world, or you didn't make sure you were not near the children if you were feeling unsafe around the children? So the first thought I had, just as a profiler, is this. How do we know she killed the children? How do we know husband who claims he, went out to get food and she did it while he was gone? How do we know he didn't strangle the kids and then chuck her out the window? How do we know that? And then go out for food and say it happened while he was gone. So, of course, I have to look at that possibility. So far, I haven't seen that to be true. I haven't seen the police question. Maybe when she survived the fall out the window, which didn't seem like that big a deal, like she should survive it because it wasn't that high. What she said to the police, I don't know what she said. I don't know if she's made statements to, I killed the children, I wanted to kill myself. I mean, I'm assuming those statements were made, which is why she's being charged with homicide. But, the boy, the youngest boy was 8 months old. And, I've had a long running argument about that postpartum depression, in my opinion, is not proven chemistry wise. And it hasn't been proven that your brain chemistry has changed. I don't care what people say. The scientific proof is not there. But I do believe in postpartum depression because I think sometimes you get overwhelmed. The kid cries and it's tiring, and you're either working too much and you have too much on your plate, or you're not working, you're left alone and alone and nobody's helping you and you're stuck home alone with that baby and it drives you insane. I mean, that kind of thing. I think the depression while you have children, whether they're babies or toddlers or teenagers, can drive you to a state of not being very happy and being very depressed and even aggressive and violent possibly, and maybe even homicidal. However, we have to say, when we're talking about homicide, did the person know what they were doing? Did they have options? Or did they just do what they did because they wanted to? And did they have control of their mind at the time? And now, if we say that, a woman, she's suffering from postpartum depression, why can't we say serial killers are suffering from a, crappy life, crappy childhood, and they never got over it, and and many people say this, that they were then unable to control themselves and they wanted to kill women. Okay, same argument. She had an option, and her husband was right there, and she waited for him to leave, supposedly, and then killed all the children. It's really hard. It's hard to fathom in the sense that There's nothing here that says she was involved in a religious cult, that she was living a horrible life. Suppose Andrea Yates, people are like, oh my God, she had to live in this like converted school bus for a while. And then her husband got her a house, but apparently it's too late. And then all these ideas she had. So she was definitely crazy. Well, here we have a situation where we don't see any of that. We see a lovely home. We see a woman who has money. The family has money. They have lots of choices. She didn't appear to be unhappy, or the kids unhappy. So we don't see any of this going on there. And yet the same thing happened as Andrea Yates. So I find that very interesting. And I'm going to talk about a father who just did the same thing. And how do we think differently about the man who did it? Let me check on your comments here. Strega says, as a nurse, textbooks and clinicals do not prepare you for real life. Second, women can suffer from postpartum depression from several months to years, and she was seeking help accordingly, supposedly. But again, I'm not saying it's not depression. My concern has always been that it's always claimed to be chemical, just because you've had a baby. And I haven't seen the evidence of that. I know I'm going to get attacked constantly for that. If you believe differently, you have a right to do so. I just have never seen the scientific proof. However, I believe very strongly that you can get severely depressed raising children and having babies. It's exhausting. And sometimes it's a difficult situation, especially in a country like the United States, which you do not tend to have help. In some countries, once you have a baby, you have all these sisters and aunts and grandmothers to help you out. In the US, a lot of times you're just left alone in the suburbs or in the city to deal with it all by yourself. And so sometimes it becomes too much. But the question is, when is it okay to kill your children because you're struggling? When you have the ability and the support system to walk away to get help. Maybe you have to go into an institution, whatever. But how is it okay because you're a woman? And this is what I'm pointing out. It's often because it's a woman, we go, oh, she had postpartum depression, so she couldn't help herself. Really? She waited till her husband left and then she strangled all her kids? If that's what happened, she could help herself. She just wanted to make sure that her husband was out of the picture so he wouldn't stop her. Same as Andrea Yates. Yeah. Yeah. So, I remember thinking I was kind of off after my son was born. Well, it's a big change, and it can be a great change for happiness. And it can be a great change for massive stress, because it's a lot of work. And if you've been working, for example, you're in a profession and then you have to stay home with the kid. It could be that you're missing all your mates. People get depressed for so many reasons. People get depressed after a loved one dies and they're living alone. Divorce causes severe depression. Life can cause severe depression. The problem is when you're caring for someone and you have severe depression, the question is, how do you treat that person that's in front of you? Because they add to the anxiety, they add to the stress level. So you have to, as a human being, make those choices of whether you are safe to be with that person or not. And if you're not safe, you have to leave and get help until you don't get to the point where you kill them off because you'd rather have them dead than have to deal with them. I just find it interesting because women seem to get off with the, oh, I feel sorry for her. Now, I want to see if you feel sorry for this guy. All right. So here's the other case. This guy is, okay, here we go. This is a lovely family. All the neighbors say, super nice family, never heard any problems, just seemed very sweet. He's a doctor, by the way. He's accused of trying to kill his wife and 2 children by driving a Tesla off a cliff. Now, mind you, he wasn't just trying to kill his wife and 2 children. In this instance, he was actually trying to kill himself as well. It was an attempted murder-suicide. At least we think it is. All right, let me show you where he was. He was driving along here. So he's driving along this cliff edge. And at number 1, you can see he's driving along. Then it says 2, he performs a U-turn before the tunnel. He veers off the road and then ends up veering off of the cliff and goes right down that cliff. Now, to show you where he is, I mean, it's really amazing, this whole thing. That is what he went off of. Can you believe that? Holy crap. That's a heck of a dive off a cliff. And this is the car at the bottom. It's unbelievable. What's unbelievable is they all lived. So at this point, at least they're all alive. I don't know if they're going to live, but they're all alive. And they got them out of there. And so here's the question. First of all, I don't know what his statement is yet, but do we know he was attempting to commit a murder-suicide? Now, it looks like he did a U-turn before the tunnel and went off the cliff. So the question was, did he turn left and just say, screw you, and then just grab his wheel, and pull it to the left and just go right off from 2 to 3, right off the cliff? Was he arguing with his wife? Apparently, she said something that basically to that effect. Did he just lose it and say screw it and jerk the wheel and go off the cliff? Or was he pissed and said, well, fine, we'll just turn around, and he didn't make the turn properly and he went off the cliff? Don't know. I don't know. I'm not the defense attorney in this, but that's the claim. Now, that he went on, that it was attempted to kill his wife and 2 children, but he was in the car, so that would be clearly also murder-suicide. Now, let's see what it says. Dharmesh Patel, 42 years old, was booked into San Mateo County Jail and is due to appear in court on Monday. He is facing first-degree attempted murder and child abuse charges. He spent 3 weeks in the hospital due to serious injuries from the crash. And it says it's unclear whether the children and wife are still in the hospital or if they've been released. I don't know why that would be some big hidden thing. That's kind of weird. It says right here, miraculously, all 4 members of the family survived without any serious injuries. And my God, how in the world did that happen? I mean, that's just unbelievable when you think about how far that car went down, how smashed up it was. How the heck did they survive? It's crazy. Now, they ruled out possibilities there was a brake malfunction. So they thought maybe it was the Tesla was in self-driving mode and something weird happened, but they ruled it out. And they've looked all over the car and they don't think it was a brake malfunction, but they're checking into everything. Okay. Let's see what else it says. Let's see. There was no guardrail, so that's why they went over. He is speculated to have performed a sharp turn before reaching the tunnel, which is where it veered off the road onto a dirt area and then down the cliff. He was driving too fast. There's no question. And let's see what else it says. See if it says anything about the wife saying he did this on purpose. Initially assumed, they thought everybody was dead for sure, but they found out they weren't, which was just amazing. Now, neighbors have expressed their shock after learning the allegations against Patel, describing their family as idyllic. Roger Newmark, who lives several doors down from the family, said that they're the sweetest couple and they have the greatest 2 little kids. The hospital where Patel works as a radiologist also released a statement after the crash. They were saddened to learn of a traffic incident involving one of our physicians and his family. We're extremely grateful there were no serious injuries. We will not respond further as this incident is under investigation. So now, could it have been an accident? Perhaps, maybe maybe they had an argument and he lost control of the car. I don't know. But let's assume that he made a decision, screw it all, I'm killing everybody. I'm going to go, that's it, we're done. Our family's done. And he drives off the cliff and crashes and kills his wife and his children. And he survives. Let's say the wife and children died. Would we treat him the same way as we treat the midwife? Would we say, well, he can't have postpartum depression, so he's chemically perfectly fine. So if he's depressed, it's just too damn bad. His depression doesn't count. Because if you're going to kill your wife and children, I'm going to say you're depressed. People who commit family annihilations are always depressed. What, do you think they're happy people? I think I'll kill everybody in the house today because I'm in a good mood. No, they hate their families, or they hate their life, or they hate both. They have severe depression. They feel like life is worthless. They feel they can't handle things. They want things to stop, certain things to end, which could be the control the family has over them, or the stress the family causes, or whatever it is. Everybody's depressed who commits that kind of crime. A lot of times they're also psychopathic and depressed, in which case they think their depression overrides anybody else's needs. But that's the question. And my whole thinking is, how are we analyzing these things properly? Do we give women a break because they're females? And that we believe that because they have, they've had to go through childbirth, do we give them extra break? I mean, it's funny because we've been arguing for years over menstruation and PMS, and like, hey, don't say just because I'm in a bad mood, it's PMS. But then on the other hand, you want to say, hey, I'm in a bad mood because it's PMS. It's like, which way do we go with these things? And what responsibility do we take? And at what point is it too far to go? I mean, we can have issues. We could shriek and scream and stuff like that. But when it comes to strangling your children, I mean, I have to say, Mr. Patel, Dr. Patel, going off the cliff, I can understand that a lot better. Because, in a moment of rage, you just go like this and just end it all. Don't think. But to walk into every one of your children's bedrooms and strangle them to death, looking in their faces, I'm going to say that's a lot worse. Kind of like Andrea Yates drowning every one of her children methodically. This was the same thing. Strangled 3 children methodically while she made sure her husband wasn't there. I don't know. I'm not saying where this is going to go. I'm just saying it's interesting how we see things differently, especially when it's a female involved, that we sort of give women a big break on this. It's like they don't, we can understand why they do this. Okay. I'm sorry, but I don't see any good reason to strangle 3 children, because there's especially a person who has contacts, a person who has support, a person who has she had lots of choices. Why would she choose this? That's if she did it. I want to make sure the husband didn't kill the kids and chuck her out a window first, but I'd like to know that. But I just think it's interesting how we look at things sometimes. Mia says it says something though that her husband is standing by her. Yes, he did. Unless he did it in his covering. Andrea's husband also stood by her. That is very telling to me. Well, yes, this is true. The day after this happened, the husband wrote this, incredibly long letter, shall we say, about how to don't blame his wife. This wasn't normal for her. She's really a wonderful human being. She's fabulous. She's great. She was a wonderful mother, blah, blah, blah. And he writes this incredibly long thing about how wonderful she is and how wonderful each one of the children is. And it was kind of weird in a way. Are you trying to, maybe you're in shock and you just can't deal with it. So you just want to write this thing so you don't have to deal with the pain of it? Or do you feel guilty? Like you knew damn well she should never be around these kids, but you didn't do anything about it because you were too selfish doing whatever you were doing? Did you do it yourself? What, it was interesting. And Andrea's husband, yes, he also did, Rusty Yates. He also did say, she just had psychological problems. But again, is that because he didn't step up to the plate? I don't know. I it's interesting, but does because the mate, the husband, the wife, forgive, which they're asking to forgive that person, doesn't mean they aren't legally responsible for murdering children. Those children are probably like, hey, wait a minute. Can you stop forgiving Mom right now? Because we're dead. She strangled us. She looked at us in the eyes and she didn't care. She strangled us to death. We were desperate for our lives. How can we not see? We don't seem to put ourselves in a children's place. We sometimes see if a serial killer is strangling a victim, he's taken her out, he's raped her, and he's strangling her, he's looking her in the eyes, and she's got that, she's got that, the hands around his neck, and she's struggling she looks in the face of her killer, and she can't survive. And we think how horrifying that must have been for her. That was a total stranger. Can you imagine looking at your mom's eyes and seeing your own mother kill you, the mother that you trusted, that was supposed to raise you and take care of you and protect you? Your own mother's killing you? Do we not understand how the child would feel? I'm sorry. I don't understand why we're so easy to forgive a mother murdering her children like that. I have a problem with that. I do. Maybe there's a reason, maybe there's something there, but if she knew what she was doing, she's legally responsible. And she killed, murdered, brutally murdered, if she did it, 3 innocent children. Yeah, the old thing about women's submission, blah, blah, blah. No, Andrea also participated in the church. She wanted to be part of the church. She chose to have children. She wasn't totally unable to make choices. No, here in America, we're not in a country that women have 0 choices. If you choose to be with a certain guy and you choose to be in a certain church and you choose to go ahead and get pregnant, sorry, you made those choices with your husband. Why are we always blaming the husband? Oh, he made her do it. No, he didn't. Who says she didn't make him do it? Nobody looks at that. Sometimes if I look at my life, I chose the places we went to church at. Not my husband. He was kind of laid back about that thing. I'll go, hey, we're going to go here. And he'd go there with me. So I made a lot of those choices. But we can't keep blaming the husbands for every choice that's made. I chose to homeschool. He didn't. So, I just find it interesting how it's sort of always the guy's fault, which it just bugs me. This is a good question, Mia. Anyone who murders is arguably mentally ill. You would think, wouldn't you? So are they responsible? BK is a sociopath. Is that his fault? Makes my head explode to think about it. Yeah, I mean, when you come right down to it, anybody who gets pleasure out of torturing, raping, murdering other human beings, to killing their own children, something's wrong upstairs. I mean, I can't say anything is right upstairs. But then the question is, legally in the system, what do we do about that? And do we then just feel sorry for them and say, oh, well, whatever, we still love you? I mean, I leave that to more of, spiritual, religious issues. But in the legal system, it's, not so okay. You've seen women beaten down? I've seen men beaten down. That's my point. Of course, you can get in a situation where you lose when you stay with a person who gaslights you, emotionally tortures you, does all kinds of things. Yes, you get beaten down to the point where some people can't function anymore. But it's true for men as well as women. I've seen men in those same situations. They can't get out of they think they can't get out. They can. They just don't choose to because they've been beaten down. So it's both directions. And in our country, we do have the ability to leave, in the US at least. There's always a problem if you have children and no income, then you're kind of in a crappier situation. But again, sometimes men stay for the exact same reasons women stay. So, abusive relationships are unpleasant to be in. You know what I mean? Very difficult to be in. But, we still have to obey the law, and we still don't have the right to take away somebody else's life because we're not having a good one. That's my kind of point on that. Because we're not having a good one, we can't do that. I wanted to, speaking of just, what was that the one wait a minute, where's the one I want to talk? Oh, somebody asked me about, this guy, the Heaven's Gate guy. And I thought it was interesting because, he got people to follow him and his religious, really very bizarre stuff. And he had hooked up with this woman. They weren't actually lovers. They were like soulmates, but not lovers. And they ran this thing for a long time where they got people to follow them. And the question here is, how much control does another person have over you? And I just want to read you just a little bit about this. And I find him different from Jim Jones. Okay, I do. Jim Jones to me was a manipulative psychopath. But the question is this whack job the same thing? And yes, he does have crazy eyes. So, but he doesn't always have crazy eyes. So I think that's important. Some people thought of him as grandfatherly or fatherly. So he obviously had some charisma of some sort in order to get people to follow him, shall we say. But I want to just read you a little bit. And what I think about this guy. So the Heaven's Gate thing, if you haven't heard about it, it's listed on Wikipedia as an American new religious movement, often described as a cult. I wouldn't call it a new religious movement at all. It was a very tiny group of people, basically these two characters, who with the wackiest stuff you ever heard, who got people to hang out with them and to follow them, and then eventually just do what they said because I don't know how much they believed it, or they wanted to believe it, or they wanted to have a place, some place in the world. They wanted to run away from the majority of the world, but they wanted a place in the world. And this is true for all human beings. And that's why people do join cults and get involved in certain groups, because in spite of the fact they may not feel connected to maybe their family or their community or their culture, they still want to be part of something. It's a human nature thing. So anyway, this guy's name is Marshall Applewhite, and he hooked up with Bonnie Nettles. And they met in 1972 and went on a journey of spiritual discovery, identifying themselves as the two witnesses of revelation. They attracted a following of several hundred people, but they weren't all together at the time. They just came in. A lot of them came and went. And so when they finally committed suicide, the wife had, she's not his wife. The woman had died of cancer, which supposedly really upset him because he thought she shouldn't die, and how did that happen? And so by the time he got people to commit suicide, there were 39 people in the group. All right. Anyway, the guy had it's got a strange history, and the things he believed in, and this is something I want to point out. I don't see him so much as psychopathic as highly narcissistic, but also a desperate narcissist, in the sense that he kept looking for an answer to being important. And this happens, I think, sometimes in society when people can't feel important in their own family. They can't feel important in their own community. They suddenly feel like they're nobody, and they don't know how to become somebody. So then they start into this sometimes very, very bizarre ideations, where they start reading things and thinking, well, this could be true. And if we connect A to B to C, maybe Z, throw that in, this will make a world in which we will become important in. So he had, my Lord, let's see, what did he basically think? Okay. They thought that they were the two, or the UFO two. They believed they would be killed and then resurrected in the view of others and transported onto a spaceship. This event they referred to as the demonstration. Okay. Yeah, it didn't go well. Anyway, they changed their names over and over again, and they had these really weird names that they would call themselves. And they kept changing what they believed in, because it wasn't really working, you see. So then they would incorporate something else into it. And it was like, basically they kept just mixing things into the cake, trying to come up with a recipe that would work. And it was so bizarre. And they were so all over the place. They very unfocused as far as this is the truth, or this is the truth, or this is the truth. They couldn't figure it out. So they wanted to make a truth. So they're like throwing things in there and mixing it up. And you say, how did they get people under those conditions to listen to them? Because they're so whack jobs. I mean, they're literally whack jobs. But this goes to where people are unable to connect well with others and in a way that is satisfying. And so when they jump onto these wild rides, it's kind of like going to an amusement park, and you're not going to go on that merry-go-round because that didn't work for you last time. So we're going to we're going to go on this crazy ride. And being part of that crazy ride means you're really special, because you're willing to go on the crazy ride. And so it's a very, very odd mental mix. I don't really see him as just a straight up psychopath who wanted to control people to the point like Jim Jones, because Jim Jones was into politics and a whole bunch of other things. He loved the control he got over people, the manipulation. This guy's just, he's like a pinball machine, just bouncing everywhere. But people bounced with him because they had nothing better to do. They had no better place to be. So they did. go along with it until did they believe everything? Maybe not, but maybe for them, by the time they committed suicide with him, maybe they just thought there's something around that corner. Maybe it's true. I don't like what's here. I'll just go with it. And so, it's a very strange. I mean, when you read it, it's just so bizarre. Most of the people, they say a lot of spiritual hippies, long-time truth seekers who probably jumped from different kinds of concepts, but never quite finding anything that really satisfied them. And in the end, when people eventually commit suicide in one of these cult situations, it's because they just really they want to believe there's something better out there, and this is maybe the only way to get it. So I look at this guy because I was asked, what do I think of him? I think he's got a severe narcissism problem, but I don't actually see him as a psychopath. Not even that. I mean, you could say, well, he's got grandiose thinking for damn sure, because he believed he was like Jesus reincarnated, and he was one of the 2 UFO people or whatever. But it's so convoluted, shall we say. And so he changed so often, kept flipping. I don't think he had that much control over his thinking because he was, everywhere in every place in his own head. And he was willing to just literally just grab anything and just try to turn it into something that other people would go along with him. And so if they went along with him, then he'd feel good, right? Because then he'd be a leader. He definitely had extreme need to have people believe in him, but I don't see him in the same way as Jim Jones. Jim Jones, I think, he was frightening and very, very calculating. I don't see that in this guy. I just think he's so far out of it that he didn't have as huge a group as Jim Jones did. And so he got people that, just kind of like neglected people, who wandered into his sphere. They came and went a lot, but eventually he had whatever he had there at the end was enough to convince them to kill themselves. And so they did, and he did. So that was the end of, what was this thing called? Heaven's Gate. What was it called? I'm sorry, Heaven's Gate. Yes. It was a very strange thing, but I can't come up with more than that. I just think it's kind of interesting. Jones became paranoid. Yeah, so did this guy. But paranoia comes with when you aren't able to achieve what you think you should be able to achieve, and you don't know how, you start losing the marbles to tell you how to do these things, especially if you're trying to achieve something completely wacko. Your chances of having things fall apart are large. And then you begin to, you say, well, why is this happening? And so you look outside of yourself to prove why it's all falling apart. Martin says, I think Applewhite was controlling. Well, yes. I mean, he's not controlling, but disguised it better than Jones. He got some of the male members of the group to castrate themselves. Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, he did. I mean, but he, again, you wonder why people even went along with him. I mean, Jim Jones was much more of when you see him, Jones, you see him as a figure that you can see him as a pastor to a flock. This guy, this guy to me is like, hey, that weirdo down the street, that kind of guy. Now that he could get some people to go along with these crazy ideas. Yes, he did get people to, I think he went in for the castration himself. I don't know what doctor you got to do that, but that was supposed to, I guess, eliminate some of your needs. So that you would then focus on what was whatever. I'm not saying he didn't find people that were desperate and messed up and controlled them by giving them these ideas. Yeah, he did. But I just don't see him on the range of Jim Jones. David Koresh is another one. Yeah. So yeah, there's what? Heaven's Gate were highly intelligent people. It sounds so stupid on the outside looking in, but anyone can be vulnerable. Well, I don't know what you mean by highly intelligent. Education doesn't make you highly intelligent. And sometimes people become, in a sense, overly, how do you want to say it? In other words, if you don't think too much, then you don't expect too much. But then when you think too much, then you begin to wonder, what's the point of the universe type of thing, and you don't just accept and go along. You start questioning, and then wanting the deep answers to everything. And you look deeper and deeper and deeper, but the deeper you go, the less you find. So that can be problematic there. As far as NXIVM, I can't even, I remember some about it, but I don't remember much about it. Let's put it this way. There's always going to be cults. And I say that there's always going to be some people who are pretty whack jobs themselves. That's what I'm going to say. A lot of them are very whack jobs themselves. Some of them are very psychopathic. Some are just highly narcissistic. And they're always going to find somebody to follow them because if they offer something, they must offer something. Sometimes they do have a charisma enough where if they believe in something enough, they can get people to follow them. I mean, I remember the guy that I said, came up with that YouTuber who got, like, now he's up to a third of a million views on that one Brian Koberger and all the links he has to all these other crimes. I don't know who the hell that dude was, but he came across to many people as very sure of himself, like, hey, and this could be true, and this, and this. And they were telling him, oh my God, you got to go to the police and give them your information. You're brilliant. And I'm thinking, oh my God, why would you think this guy's brilliant? Everything he says is idiotic. But he does it with a confidence that says, believe me, and don't even though he did stop and say, what do you think? He was still saying, believe me. Because I put all this effort into it. I've done all these studies, believe me. And so I've seen people on the internet, not only him, but others, get people to just go along with them and think, oh my God, they just know what they're talking about. I hope I'm not one of those who's just making you all think that. I want you to think for yourselves. I want you to examine. But I think when some people come across, no matter how crazy their ideas are, like David Icke. I mean, I commented on him and I got attacked for that because a lot of people think David Icke is brilliant. Well, he's got some things that are correct, in my opinion. Even some of his conspiracy theories may not be wrong, but then he melds it with other stuff to the point of you're like, it's just nonsense. And he puts a lot of fancy words in and he makes word salad and people think, oh my God, this is so brilliant, I can't understand it. Maybe because it doesn't make any sense, but you think you don't understand it because you're not as smart as him. So, it's fascinating as to why people get caught up in this stuff. But, there's always a sucker out there, as they say, very, very sad, but true. There's a lot of people here I don't even know, as far as you're saying who these guys are. Wow. I'm going to do a whole thing on Jim Jones at some point because Jim Jones was heavily caught up in a lot of politics. And that's a fascinating part of this, that there was a whole community of people who worked with Jim Jones and gave him credibility. And I'm always worried about when people give somebody that they shouldn't give credibility. But yeah, I'm going to do a thing on Jim Jones because there's some really fascinating things. But that's going to be I have to do a whole study on him. And a whole show on him. That's going to be a whole different thing. But speaking of somebody's just mentioning many wives. Have you seen this guy? This is kind of interesting. This guy, this fella, and this goes to show you what being in Hollywood will do for you. Again, people, when you become famous, that people will then go, oh, you're somebody, and there's somebody that we should think is cool. Okay, he just got arrested. He was in Dancing with Wolves. This is this guy. Good looking fellow. I'll say that for him. Very, very attractive man. He was in Dancing with Wolves and he gained trust with tribes across America as a healing medicine man before arrest for allegedly sexually assaulting young Native American girls and running a cult. So here we go again. So his name is Nathan Chasinghorse. He starred with Kevin Costner. He's 46 years old. He played Smiles a lot in the Oscar-winning film. And he was taken into custody on Tuesday in his North Las Vegas home. He shares with his 5 wives, you see. So anyway, now they think of him as a medicine man, perform healing ceremonies and spiritual gatherings. He's got this reputation for doing all these things. However, he used that as a tool to sexually assault young girls. So the arrest warrant reads. And he got his followers to follow him because he could communicate with higher beings. And he was referred to as a medicine man or a holy person. And some of the girls were as young as 13. And this is one thing interesting about this is we talk about women, boys, girls being abducted into these cults. Abducted. We talk about them being abducted by sex rings. This is all highly overblown. The way you get into these things and become a part of something and get taken advantage of is not because you were abducted. It's because you were lured and you had something in you that allowed you to be lured and some belief in somebody you shouldn't have had belief in, so that you wanted to be with them and to have whatever they were selling. And, it's not that you were actually physically abducted. They've identified at least 6. His cult is known as the Circle. At least 6 alleged victims and uncovered sexual allegations dating back to 2000 in multiple states, including Montana, South Dakota, and Nevada. The actor was born on the Rosebud Reservation, which is home to I can't pronounce it, Sikangu Sioux, one of the 7 tribes of the Lakota Nation. So again, it's your community, that the community that you're in is the one that becomes a danger to you, not something far away that takes you away. So you really got to look at, when you talk about children, grandchildren, and all that, who are they hanging around and who do they believe? Especially somebody who's charismatic. Oh my gosh, I was in Hollywood and and I have all these abilities. Well, fine. You can have all the abilities you want, but does that mean that we should give up our lives and our freedoms and our self-control to go with what you tell me to do just because you have some supposed higher spiritual quality than me or ability to talk to whomever? And again, we have to look at our own selves and say, what is allowing us to get into that situation? If he was hooking up with children, where are the parents? Where's the community to stop this from happening? And so my last thing I'll talk about today, second to last thing, I want to mention this creepo. Now this creepo is a MS-13, and what's really horrifying is, first of all, he was absolutely one horrible human being. Okay, that's all you can say. And this is his girlfriend. All right. Now, he was accused of torturing the woman's child, this little boy, 10 years old, and he's an accused child killer. All right. Now, a suspected MS-13 gang member set to go on trial for the horrific 2018 slaying. Wow, it took 5 years of his California girlfriend's 10-year-old son. He's a native of El Salvador and living in the U.S. illegally. Now, his name is Kareem Ernesto Leiva, 37 years old, and his American girlfriend, this one who I consider more responsible than him, Heather Maxine Barron. She's 33. They're both charged with the murder and torture of the child, as well as assaults against the other 2 children in the home. Now, hold on a second. What I find interesting, they beat the kid, they starved him, they did all kinds. I don't even want to get to what they did to this kid, okay? But here's what I found fascinating. All right. Well, while in jail, Leiva shanked another inmate. He's just a fun guy. And he was accused of domestic violence against females in 2010 and 2013 as well. And he was indicted. His brother was indicted in a federal racketeering case or a deadly drug ring. So we're talking about cartels. We're talking about gangs. We're talking about some really vicious stuff. But I'm trying to find the part on the girl. Anthony and his siblings suffered all kinds of forms of abuse, burning, and being locked in rooms. All right. Where's the part I thought was interesting about the woman? Where is the woman? All right. Years of alleged child abuse. Even before Barron began dating Leiva, another adult male acquaintance of her was accused of sexually assaulting her son when he was just 5 years old. Oh, you see, so she did not apparently learn that you don't hook up with guys that torture your children. Let's look at this woman again. Barron, who was able to keep custody of her 7 children, 3 of whom she shared with Leiva, who fathered another 5 kids with 3 other women. Oh my God. According to authorities, he was especially abusive to his non-biological children and allegedly admitted to shoving Anthony's younger brother so hard that he had to have staples to close a gap in his head. So now Anthony's family sued the social workers for $32 million. Oh, they approved a settlement of $32 million for failing to properly handle the accusations. The members include the boy's father, as well as the maternal aunts and uncles who are testifying against this guy. So where is the most dangerous place for children? In their own families, and in families that nobody steps up to the plate. That woman, somebody should have gone after her way, way long time ago, because it was years and years of abuse against all of her children. Where the heck were all the grandparents, all the aunts and uncles, all the fathers? I mean, outside of the ones that this creep fathered. I mean, the dangerous part is right in the home. It's just extremely sad. And I'm going to take your comments in a second, just for our final comments. But I want to say one thing before I go to that. Yes, the movie is out. It is called Hoax, and it is a Sherry Papini movie put out by. I have not seen it. I don't know that I want to see it. And it's, who put that movie out? It's one of the few places I don't have access to. I forgot. Let me see if I can find out where that movie is. Oh, here we go. Hoax, the kidnapping of Sherry. I love the way they say the kidnapping of Sherry Papini. It's put out by, okay, where is it? It's put out by, why can't I find it? Okay, wait a minute. Let me find, the really thing I wanted to comment on was what the actress said, which I just wanted to punch the actress in the face. Let's see, hold on a second. Where is it? Hold on, not her. Where is the one about, yeah, seriously? Hold on one second. Have some patience. Just lost it. And what the heck? Where is it? I just was so annoyed by what this woman said. Now, let's see if I can find it another way, because it's fallen off my list here. Let's see. I'll put in Hoax, Sherry Papini, an actress, and hopefully it'll pop up. Hoax, Sherry Papini. Oh, it's Lifetime. That's who it is. Okay. Where is what she said? Her name is Jamie King, and she was upset about this. Where did it go? She opens up about playing the accused, Sherry Papini. And she said, I read a news story about Sherry and immediately thought that there were so many other layers that people are not exploring in this human being. She revealed she wanted to look beyond the sensational headlines. Just watch my videos, please. But you didn't. You made the movie and didn't pay attention. Anyway, frankly, it made me upset and it made me mad. Because you felt sorry for Sherry Papini? Is this a thing? You could see that this woman that's seemingly beautiful and perfect, and the way that they told her story was basically that she was this terrible, awful human being that did this awful thing to her family and to the community. You know why they told it that way? Because she's that kind of awful person. She's a psychopath. Stop giving her some extra credit here. Oh, you see, she has many layers. She has all these issues. You see, this is the female break I talk about. She said that she did make some horrific choices. No, those are called crimes. They're not choices. They're crimes. Absolutely. But I felt like everybody has a reason for doing something. Yeah, because she's a psychopath and wants attention and likes to manipulate people and get over on them. That's why. No one is a perfect individual. This has nothing to do with perfection. This has to do with a criminal mind and a person who has ruined her family, stolen money from the community, there's a whole bunch of things. I just really need to know more of the whys. Really? Okay, maybe you should have gone to some experts. I just don't like people being exploited. What? Wait a minute. You think Sherry Papini is being exploited? No. The American people are being exploited by you and your Lifetime for putting this together, because everybody's got, I got to find out. I want to see how this all plays out. And she plays Sherry Papini. Sherry Papini is going to gain from this. I guess she didn't get paid for this, but it's okay. She'll get a reality show, I'm sure. And I'm sure you'll be one of those people that will think that's wonderful. We're finally going to find out more about Sherry Papini's layers. I'd like to lay something on her, but it wouldn't. Anyway, I thought that just was, I'm like, oh my God, really? So anyway, all right, let me go to your comments. Let's see. Well, the husband finally divorced. He's been divorcing her for like, I don't know how long now. I'm wondering when he's going to get finished with divorcing her, because I heard he was divorcing her a long time ago. And my concern was this. I'm going to enjoy some more of this wonderful IPA Double Dog. I should get paid for this. Hey, Double Dog, send me 10. That's a strong IPA. Anyway, my concern was, like the men that forgave their wives for killing their children, will he forgive Sherry Papini and take her back? So my concern was that's where he will go, because I consider him adult, which he at least admitted to being adult, which I thought was impressive. And he said he wanted to protect his children from her, which I think is impressive. I just want to see the divorce go through and she doesn't have access to the children anymore. That's what I would like to see. So I don't know how that's all going to pan out. Did he really believe her? Now, here's an interesting point. Again, she had a history of lying. She had a history of manipulating. She had a history of claiming things that weren't true. Her whole family said that. Was he really this dense, or just does he play along because he wants what he wants? And that's why I call him adult. In my opinion, women who suffer from, and I that's a bad word, suffer is bad. Everybody suffers from them, but they display Munchausen's syndrome, or Munchausen's by proxy. Munchausen's being when you hurt yourself or claim you've been hurt. Munchausen's by proxy is when you do something to your children or claim something has been done to your children. It's not a condition. It is a behavior of psychopathy. I got to do this right because I always say it wrong all these years. Psychopathy is the way you're supposed to say it now. Psychopathy. I hate it. I like psychopathy. Anyway, so psychopathy. Female psychopaths, one of their behaviors is Munchausen's, Munchausen by proxy. So they have to marry somebody who is adult, because the adult has to not pay any attention to all the lies that they do and all the manipulations. So the adult tends to be this. He'll go along with the program as long as he gets food and sex. And she takes care of the kids. Usually that's it. Kind of like, somebody will say, well, you want to treat a husband like a dog, you want to make sure he's fed and patted on the head and, taken for whatever. That's how you keep a happy husband. Treat him like a dog, but I don't mean in a bad way, but in a good way. So adult husband, as long as he's getting those needs met, will look the other way. And I found this true quite often with women who exhibit Munchausen's, because you say, how the heck could you kill so many of your babies and you never noticed? How did this happen? And it happens because they're getting their needs met, and they just turn a blind eye pretty much to everything else. And so I think that's what he did. And then she pulled this really big one. And I think, yeah, I think at that point he was thrown into the limelight and he had a harder time trying to figure it out. But I still think he turned a blind eye to an awful lot. And, he definitely was a dolt. My question is, will the dolt take her back at some point? We'll find out. Yeah, naive. Naive is the word for it. But dolt, that's my favorite word, dolt, for this. Because it's more than being naive. It's like he's literally willing to not see things on purpose, to kind of be stupid about things. That's why I call him a dolt. To be stupid about it. Like, well, I didn't know that was happening. Really? Okay. What did you think that your kids do? She goes into the room and the kid's perfectly happy, and the wife goes in there to change his diaper, and he ends up dead. But it happens 3 times in a row over the next 3 years. What part didn't you get? And the fact that she is a general, it's not just what she does at that time. Like Sherry Papini didn't just live a perfectly wonderful life and then one day wake up and decide I'm going to be fake kidnapped. No. I say she's got a history all the way back. She's been a psychopath forever. And the family knew it. And he comes into the picture and he's already got these kids at a certain age and he still doesn't know she's a psychopath? Okay. Oh, what happened here? Let's see. Florence said, I hear he did go back to her after saying he was leaving her when the cops broke the news of her deception. So he had suspicions, but then he went back and then they came and told him it's worse than you think. And then he said, oh my God. And he left again. But will he go back a second time? I'm waiting to see. I mean, I hope he doesn't, but I wouldn't be surprised. I always remember, I swear to God, I always remember. It's one of my favorite moments of a talk show. I think it was Oprah, which I'm not a talk show person, but I saw this one. And the guy was poisoned by his wife. And what she did, she gave him this stuff to slow down his blood. And she hoped that would kill him. And when it didn't kill him, she decided to shoot him in his sleep. But when she shot him in his sleep, the blood was so slow that he didn't bleed out. So he survived. But they were back. So she went to prison for like 7 years or whatever. And then she got out and they got back together again. So I think it was Oprah. She goes, why would you do this? And he goes, well, I love her. I guess she had some real issues with me because I was a bit of a jerk. So I could understand why she shot me. She goes, well, how well do you sleep at night? He goes, not that well. Dolt. Dolt. Oh my God. If she gets a TV show. And they're already raving about Anna Delvey, and her wonderful show and how it's the cat's meow and blah, blah, blah. Oh my God. Oh, it's truly appalling. But that's the world we live in. People like excitement. They like drama. And they're willing to accept that, even in their own lives. Oh, and I'm going to point out something about this, which is just a truism as to why people stay with someone sometimes who is clearly using them and all of that. And sometimes you even see this, especially with older people and sometimes elderly people, where a daughter will say, hey, I know that this woman, she's 20 years younger than my dad. I think she's taking advantage of him. And there was one guy who was like giving this woman like tons of money and stuff. And you're like, well, why would he do that? And even knowing he's being taken advantage of, why would he do that? Well, because without that woman in his life is dull and lifeless. So having her there, in spite of what she does, is more energetic. It gives you energy. There's something happening. There's excitement, even if it's bad stuff. It's something. And I think it's human nature that when life gets extremely lonely and dull and all that stuff, people are willing to take chances just to bring some energy into their lives. So Adults will do that too, because they'll say, hey, this woman likes me. She's pretty. I know she lies to me half the time, but hey, at least I have somebody, and maybe for some people that's worth it. It's, you can go it alone and have no one, or you can just sort of accept what you can accept and have your drama. And maybe you actually prefer that, even if you're being lied to and manipulated. That's the way things work sometimes. Yes, that's essentially true, Elisa. There's no way they'd stay unless they derive a benefit. Yeah, so even in, Mia says, I'm a fan of boring. But this is true, that a lot of times in what we consider a codependent kind of situation, we say, why does that one person stay? Well, it's because they are benefiting in some way from the relationship, even if we view it from the outside as being damaging, unfair, unequal, and all the things we think. It gives that person something. Now, in the long run, it may damage them permanently. They could be being physically abused, emotionally abused, end up getting murdered. But until that moment, they're still getting something out of that relationship that makes them stay, that they prefer to not being in the relationship. So I think it's just something to be aware of, even for our own selves, to ask ourselves why. If we're in a situation where we go, why am I putting up with that? Or why am I attracted to that? We have to be able to, psychoanalyze ourselves and say, maybe we have a problem, Why would we join Heaven's Gate? You know what I mean? Why would we go there? Why would we go off with medicine man dude? Why would we do that? Because we have some reason. And people who are cult people who are psychopaths and high levels of narcissism, and they are manipulative, they know what bait to throw out. They will bait you. That's not like they're not offering you something you actually want. It could be anything. It could be saying, when you're not overly attractive human being, to say, you're really very beautiful. And the person's like, oh my God, nobody's ever called me beautiful before. And that's the bait. It could be, hey, you seem like you could use someone in your life. That could be the bait. Who knows what the bait is? I know you're 95 years old, but I love you anyway, even though I'm 25. And, your last years, you get a 25-year-old woman in your life. Good bait. There's a lot of bait that can be thrown out, but you have to ask your own self, what bait am I susceptible to that I lose my sense of being able to judge properly? So, okay. So anyway, that's it for today. Thank you for all being here. And so I will be doing the Hawaii case, the Dana Ireland case. It's really kind of complicated. And there's a lot of interesting issues in that case, which is one of the reasons I'm fascinated by it. So I'll be doing that. It will be Saturday, 3 p.m. EST. And I am going to play table tennis on Sunday. Yes, I am. I'm going to do it this Sunday. So, anyway, I need some exercise. I really do, because this is not exercise. This will put you on the couch. Oh my God. Oh, now look at this thing. Look at this thing. It's like, what the hell? What a mess. So anyway. Thank you very much, Lisa. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here with you today. I have had a rather boring and crappy day, so I'm actually very thrilled that you all have come here to keep me company and brighten up my day. So hey, it works. Anyway, hopefully we'll see you on Saturday. But thank you for being here for this hangout number 74. Pretty soon. Let's see how many more weeks and we'll be at 100. Well, it's hard to believe. Anyway, see you later.